To say that DC fans have been on a wild ride with the DC Extended Universe over the last decade is quite the understatement indeed. On paper, the idea of Warner Bros. Cooking up DC's answer to the Marvel Cinematic Universe seemed like a can't-miss slam dunk, and yet in reality the results have been wildly uneven. Over the course of 11 released movies, the DCEU has been called everything from an ambitious failure to positively cursed, and though the series has certainly had its triumphant moments, it's largely best remembered for its countless head-scratching creative and PR blunders. I'm Cy for WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 biggest mistakes the DCEU has ever made. Number 10. Rushing to copy the Marvel Cinematic Universe. On a broad conceptual level, the single biggest mistake Warner Bros. Made with the DCEU must surely be rushing to try and emulate the model of the MCU. With the MCU's colossal box office success, it's easy to see why the studio wanted a similar framework for their interconnected universe of DC movies, yet in their impatience they attempted to sprint their way to the big payoff. While the MCU spent several years introducing us to all the major players through a bevy of solo films building up to the Avengers blockbuster event, the DCEU skipped straight from Man of Steel to Batman vs Superman. With its Wonder Woman appearance and frantic introductions of The Flash, Aquaman and Cyborg, Batman vs Superman took a transparent shortcut to setting up the Justice League movie. And so without the audience being fully acquainted with these heroes, not to mention the film's many other production issues, Justice League landed with a thud of indifference. More than anything, it was clear that Warner Bros. Lacked a firm plan for the franchise, and rather than spend time investing audiences in these heroes before bringing them together, those in charge had tunnel vision for $1 billion Justice League payday, one which they ultimately missed out on. Number 9. The constant executive interference. Though it's certainly sensible to have some executive oversight on a gigantic movie universe that costs $200 million a pop, there's also a difference between shepherding your filmmakers in the right direction and constantly neutering their vision. The DCEU has been plagued by meddling from bigwigs almost from the jump. Batman vs Superman famously had 30 minutes cut from its runtime by nervous executives who craved a shorter length while sacrificing much of the story's internal logic. Meanwhile, on Suicide Squad, they basically took the movie away from director David Ayer during post-production and had a trailer house produce their own fast-paced music-filled cut of the film. Elsewhere, they went to war with Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman, forcing her to fight hard to keep the iconic No Man's Land scene, and after Batman vs Superman was criticised for being too dour, they mandated that Justice League be a lighter, Marvel-esque affair. Then there's everything that followed with Justice League once Zack Snyder was swapped out for Joss Whedon, namely demanding a 2-hour runtime and making the extremely ill-advised choice to digitally remove Henry Cavill's Superman moustache rather than delay the film to shoot his new scenes. Though in recent years Warner Bros. Seems to have stepped back and more or less let filmmakers do their thing, their overcautious, indecisive approach in the early going cost them dearly, resulting in projects that felt wildly uneven or depressingly sanitised, if not both. Number 8. The lack of tonal consistency. One of the biggest reasons for the MCU's continued success is that Kevin Feige has ensured that the movies have maintained a consistent tone and that audiences know what sort of movie they're getting basically every single time. The DCEU, however, has been a tonal train wreck from the outset. Man of Steel attempted to reinvent Superman in the gritty vein of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight saga, a bold decision which many nevertheless felt was inappropriate for such a traditionally hopeful, colourful character. This was compounded by Batman vs Superman, which presented a thoroughly mopey Superman and pitted him against a Batman who straight up murdered criminals. Suicide Squad, meanwhile, couldn't decide whether it wanted to be Guardians of the Galaxy or not before Wonder Woman adopted a lighter tone akin to an MCU movie. Yet in 2020 we got the R-rated Birds of Prey, and the next year Snyder was allowed to release his darker original take on Justice League before James Gunn released his insanely irreverent The Suicide Squad. There's nothing holistic about the tones and styles of these films, ensuring that audiences didn't have any idea what to expect from movie to movie. As such, you can't really blame them for not showing up or feeling bewildered when they actually did. Number 7. Syncing Batman vs Superman with Martha. Batman vs Superman had a host of problems, but the film's fate was well and truly sealed with one single word: Martha. During the hero's long-awaited mid-film battle, Batman is about to straight-up kill Superman when the Man of Steel implores him to save Martha. Superman is of course talking about his adoptive mother, Martha Kent, but given that Bruce's mother's name was also Martha, it gives him a moment for pause and he decides against killing Supes. Though the emotional crux of the scene is that Batman is finally able to humanise Superman by realising that he has a mother, the execution is overwhelmingly clunky. Worst of all is Superman awkwardly referring to his mother as Martha for the dramatic needs of the scene. Since when did Superman call his mother by her first name? The scene was widely and rightly ridiculed by fans, and given that it's the emotional foundation on which the Justice League is ultimately formed, bungling it out so catastrophically did tremendous harm to the franchise's overall integrity. Number 6. Giving Birds of Prey a ridiculous title. Given the immense popularity of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn following the release of Suicide Squad, a Harley-led spin-off should have been an easy box office hit. And yet Birds of Prey was a shocking financial bomb, grossing barely $200 million against a $100 million budget. Many reasons were cited for this, but surely the most easily avoidable of the bunch, the damn title. Because Warner Brothers felt like being ultra-edgy was the path to success, Birds of Prey was marketed with the eye-roller mouthful of a title, Birds of Prey, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Titles are so important when it comes to marketing a movie, and beyond being embarrassingly verbose, this word salad took way too long to name drop its actual focal character. As a result, cinema chains around the world simply listed the film as Birds of Prey on their marquees, ensuring people walking up on a Friday night had no idea that Harley Quinn was even in it. Following its disappointing opening weekend, cinemas around the globe began retitling the film as what it probably should have been all along, Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, but by this point the damage had already been done. Number 5. Killing Superman before anyone cared. Beyond rushing to copy the MCU, the DCEU also raced through what should have been its Infinity War moment, the death of Superman. The Death of Superman comic is a milestone story for the Man of Steel, and one that fans were eager to see played out on the big screen eventually. But in Batman vs Superman, Zack Snyder got widely overeager and had Superman killed off during the climactic battle against Doomsday. The thing is, this being just Supes' second appearance in the franchise, fans hadn't yet had the opportunity to grow firmly attached to the character, and so his death was ultimately sorely lacking in the desired emotion. It didn't help that the film ended by heavily implying his resurrection rather than letting the moment breathe, and when he finally returned in Justice League the next year, it was severely tainted by Henry Cavill's infamous digital moustache removal. This is the sort of dramatic epoch that should have happened a few years and a few movies later, once we as viewers were fully invested in Cavill's iteration of Superman, and perhaps even genuinely believed that he might be gone for good. Instead, it came off as obviously phony and emotionally inert. Number 4. Announcing countless projects that never get released. Now, movies get announced all the time that never pan out, even the MCU is guilty of it, but it's also fair to say that the DCEU has taken this over-eagerness to basically the level of self-parody. Over the years, Warner Brothers has confirmed a slew of projects that never went before cameras, from the Cyborg, Green Lantern, Deathstroke and Batman solo movies, to spin-offs featuring Harley Quinn and the Joker, and Aquaman's Black Manta, sequels to Man of Steel, and Justice League, and New Gods, and the Wonder Twins. I'm tired. This is without even mentioning Batgirl, which, despite being filmed and getting deep into post-production, was cancelled by the Warner Brothers brass as part of an effort to cut costs across the board. In the wake of the Batgirl news in particular, it's difficult for audiences to have much faith in any announced DCEU projects actually coming out, and for talent who consider making DCEU movies, the idea that your work might not ever see the light of day must be severely off-putting. If the DCEU is going to do anything beyond limp along for the foreseeable future, those in charge need to think long and hard about the projects they both announce and put into production, because fans are beyond jaded seeing so many promised movies fail to materialise. Number 3. Letting Patty Jenkins write Wonder Woman 1984. Following the success of Wonder Woman in 2017, there were plenty of reasons to be excited that director Patty Jenkins would repeat that crowd-pleasing success on the sequel, 2020's Wonder Woman 1984. Yet the film released to widely polarised views, many citing the generally clunky script and especially the film's awkward, potentially problematic resurrection of Steve Trevor. So what went wrong? Or rather, what was different this time? The key creative change between movies was allowing Patty Jenkins herself to co-write the script. Due to scheduling conflicts, the first movie's writer Alan Heinberg wasn't available to pen the sequel, and given that Jenkins had only a single prior writing credit to her name for the gritty Oscar-winning drama Monster rather than a splashy tempo, she didn't seem like a decent fit on paper. And so it shouldn't have been terribly surprising that the script, also co-written with Jeff Johns and Dave Callaham, was a clumsy mess. Despite the sequel's reception, Jenkins is still expected to undertake writing duties on the announced third film, which doesn't exactly inspire much confidence, assuming it actually gets made, of course. Number 2. Poorly handling the Ezra Miller situation. To say that post-production on the upcoming Flash movie has been a colossal headache is quite the understatement indeed, though that's due less to the film itself than the scandal-filled private life of its star Ezra Miller. Over the course of the past year, Miller has been arrested numerous times for various alleged acts of disorderly conduct, assault, burglary, and also been accused of grooming minors. Given the severity of the accusations, many called for Warner Brothers to recast Miller despite the massive costs involved with replacing an actor who appears in every scene of the major budgeted blockbuster. But Warner Brothers' biggest sin was in keeping quiet about the situation for many months, and even to this very day, they've said precious little about their troubled star beyond confirming that the film is still on track for its June 2023 release. Earlier this year, Miller apologised for their concerning behaviour and stated that they were seeking treatment for their complex mental health issues. This response proved polarising, with many commentators, some of whom questioned the authenticity of the apology and deemed it a more cynical attempt to save face ahead of the movie's massive PR push next year. Number 1. Badly marketing The Suicide Squad. And finally, we come to what's quite arguably the very best DCEU movie to date, and ironically the lowest grossing of the lot. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was a major breath of fresh air for the franchise, a quasi-reboot of David Ayer's original 2016 Suicide Squad that delivered a far more thrilling, hilarious and ultra-violent take on the IP. Despite rave reviews, however, the film was a major box office disappointment, even factoring in the impact of the pandemic and Warner Bros.' decision to release every 2021 movie day and date on HBO Max. But the studio's biggest mistake lied in how they decided to market the movie, presenting it in a confusing fashion which left casual audiences unsure of whether it was a sequel, reboot or spin-off. The trailers didn't make it clear whether this new film existed within the same continuity as the 2016 one, and as such whether viewers needed to see that film first. And so The Suicide Squad grossed just a fraction of the 2016 movie's box office take, no matter that those who did watch it generally seemed to enjoy it a whole lot more. Thankfully, the poor box office performance hasn't soured Warner Bros. On these characters entirely, as Gunn's Peacemaker series has flourished on HBO Max and has been given the green light for a second season. Sadly though, we may never get a third Suicide Squad film. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, and remember, the views expressed in this video are the opinions of the writer. You can let your opinions be politely known by commenting down below and letting us know what you think was the biggest mistake that the DCEU has made so far. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for What Culture, and have a good week.